All right, today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do layout and select the correct fastener to bring your project together. Now, you have all your pieces cut, they're all sanded, everything looks good. You're all ready now to assemble. We do not stain before assembly. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify, remember the parts of the board? This is the face, edge, and end of the board. You need to know those. That's why we did what we did on parts of a board. So the first step is on layout, because we need to lay out where the fasteners like nails and screws and all that stuff's going to go. I grabbed a packet that you all have. I grabbed a packet. Now we're at the assembly part. We've worked through the packet. Now we're in the assembly part. The first step says I'm going to talk about a gun rack. Set your gun rack together to make sure you have all your pieces, everything's good, they're all relatively the same size, everything's ready to go. Now, on the gun rack, we need to use screws. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as far as selection of which kind of fastener you're going to use. But on the layout part, I'm reading right off my directions, says, on the faces of the back pieces, measure in 3/8 from both ends. So I take the tri-square, and I'm going to go right on the end. I'm going to measure in 3/8. I put a mark. Do not use pen for this, only pencil. So it says from both ends. So I'm going to measure in on this side, 1, 2, 3/8. Now it says we're going to square these lines across. Now, you cannot hold it freestanding. You have to have it tight against there so your line is drawn straight. Now, keep these lines light, because at the very end of our project, we will sand those off. We don't want those lines on there. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to draw one very dark so you can see it. There's a light line right here. Here is a dark line. You don't want them dark. They only need to be dark enough so you can visually see it. Then it says square these lines across with a pencil and a minor square. That's what I did. Now we're going to measure up from the edge of the board a 1/2 inch. So we can measure down a 1/2 inch. We would do that for the other side. It says repeat for the other side. So we're going to go a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Now, we just did our correct layout for the gun rack on the backs. Now, in order to drill the correct one, we need to use a scratch-awl and a leather mallet, not a metal hammer. A leather mallet, we punch because aren't we telling the drill bit exactly where to go? Now, you're going to have various forms of layout on your project. Every project will have a different kind of layout. But this is the demonstration of how to use the tri-square, reading the directions, and applying that information to the board. Now, what we're going to do then is we are going to select the correct fastener. What we need to follow here. Here is a box project that has all the different kinds of fasteners on it that we have. Believe it or not, there's nails right here that have wood filler in them. You cannot see those fasteners. See how clean that edge looks? You can use what's called a plug style. On the bottom, we use screws to screw the boards together, but we want to hide those screws. We don't want to see them. Then the other option is, we call them a decorative screw or more of a round-headed screw. You can see those. So those are the 3 types of fasteners that we have, beyond one more, and I'll explain in a second. you need to select what you want to do. Every project is a little different. Here is using those screws, those decorative screws all around. For this particular project, it gives it kind of a rivet look. It gives it a different look. This side right here is held together with hidden screws using plugs. Now every project, as I said, needs to be different. Here is the lid for the box. The screws are countersunk. They're visible, but does it really matter on the inside of the box? It does not. We cannot see them. Remember, this is furniture, so you do not really want to see the fasteners that are involved in it. Some of our other projects. Is there any visual fasteners on here? No. Where are they? They're all hidden on the back. They're using screws with countersinks. Everything's hidden. On this project, there's fasteners that hold it together. These are all nails that have been used, and they're countersunk with wood fill. On this project, this needs to hold a lot of weight, doesn't it? So if we use strictly nails on this project, would that probably be a very good selection of a fastener? No, this is a shelf, and the shelf will be up in the air. Will you see any of these screws? No. Everything that you're gonna see up in here is all hidden, isn't it? So selecting the correct fastener for your project is really important. So the first one we're going to demonstrate is how to put in a screw. Now we have this board right here. Most of or all your holes are going to be drilled on a drill press or with a plug-in drill. These have more power. But for today's demonstration, I'm going to use some cordless stuff just due to the remote so we can set up and get the demonstration done. Now when I do a screw, it is really important that we understand how the screw functions. The first step is selecting a screw. We want to go 3/16 of a hole in our first board. How does the screw work? Screw fits through this one, comes to this one, and pulls this one into that one. That's how a screw ultimately functions. Now, we don't want to do this right here because we don't want to drill holes in the table, but I'm going to just demonstrate right here. We drill the hole. Now, we have the caddy for everything that we're going to need. Here is the caddy. All of our screws and nails and everything we're going to need is found right in here, along with the wood fill. So now, why drill 3/16 of a hole? Because look, the screw fits through, doesn't it? It ultimately fits right through there. And that's what we want. So I'm going to set the caddy aside for the demonstration. Now, I want this screw on the back of this. I want the screw not to be above the surface. I want it to be below the surface. So we are going to use a countersink. We're going to use a countersink. This should be done on the drill press. It's a lot easier to do. We use a countersink, and it countersinks the shape of the screw. We also have these that you can use for a countersink. Now, when I do the countersink, look, the screw is below the surface. You cannot see it. That way it doesn't scratch your wall and doesn't do those things. Now, I want to attach this board to this board. If we use the original 3/16, this screw can't grab everything. So what I want to do is, I want to use an 1/8" drill bit. That is the appropriate size drill bit for our screws. So I'm going to drill, we'll set our project together. And now I'm gonna drill through there with an 1/8 inch bit. Now, we're gonna use, everybody will use these for putting in screws. So now, I have the 1/8 inch hole right here. I have my other hole right here. So now I'm gonna put it in there, make sure it lines up with the hole. If it doesn't, you're gonna crack your board and everything's not gonna be good. Now I'm gonna put in the screw, and there it is. This is how we install a screw below the surface. Now, what if I want a screw in there, but I do not want to see that screw? So what I do right here is I will drill, this is the other option, drill 3/16 prior to doing stuff. I'm gonna take and drill the 3/8 inch bit. I'm gonna drill 3/8, this is for a plug. Now we gotta be very careful that we do not drill too deep through there. So now I have the 3/8 inch. I can go back to now my project. I wanna assemble my project. I can go right down through the hole and drill the 3/8. So we drilled the 3/16. We then do the 3/8 drill bit. Now we're ready to put our project together, so we go with the 1/8. Now we want to put in the screw. So what we do is grab another screw and we can put it in. That will be far below the surface. Now, I still want to fill that in, so how would I do that? We have plug cutters that we use. It's a special tool. You put it on a board of the same species. You put it on there and drill these, and they will create a plug. Now, creating that plug, I lost my screwdriver. Creating that plug, all we do is go in there and pop the plug out. The plug then comes out. Then we put a little bit of glue in there. Once it's done, we tap the plug in place. It sticks up a little bit. So then what we do is we take a chisel and we knock the top of the plug off. And now we can sand that flush. This is a visible screw that countersunk. This is how we install a plug. Now, how would we install one of those decorative screws? 3/16 through our board, 1/8 into our next board. Then all we have to do with that is put the screw right in, and there we have the decorative screw. Now, when we go to put in a nail, all right, let's say we're going to put in a nail. How do we put in the nail? If we just drive the nail in, what are the chances of cracking our board? That happens, doesn't it? So what we're going to do is we're going to use 3/32 of a bit. We're going to go through this into our next board. Puts a half of the diameter of the nail. Take a hammer, pound the nail in. Now you gotta be careful that you hit the nail, that you don't hit off to the side and you're gonna put a big dent in your board. You don't want that. So put the nail in until it's flush. Now what I want to do is, in our cart caddy, we have nail sets. I'm going to take the nail set, put it right here. I'm going to hit the top of the nail, drives it just below the surface. Just below the surface. Now I'm going to come back. Once I have that done, I'm going to grab a putty knife, take a little bit of the wood fill. They sell so many different varieties of wood fill. You can either use the putty knife to put that in like that. You can use a putty knife to do that. But I much prefer just to use my finger to make sure it's fully in that hole. Now when we go, you have to let this dry. It takes 5 to 8 minutes or so to dry. Now if we take a look at this example, we're gonna sand all this off. You see the yellowness? We don't want that on here, all right? That doesn't even look nice. So what we're gonna do is, there is the pile of wood fill. This one right next to it has a circle around it. The only visible sign that I can see of wood fill is the exact nail hole. That's how we put in a screw that's visible, that's hidden in the back. If this one's visible, we don't want to see the screw. I should demonstrate how to use the correct sequence of drill bits to create a plug to fill it. This is more of a decorative screw, how to use a decorative screw. And this is how we would take and install a nail. Make sure you follow the directions. All of these directions are on a sheet that I will give you so you can use this as a reference. Now we do also have an option of what's called using a biscuit. Now the biscuit is a very strong way of holding things together. Now the biscuit has a special tool to use that'll cut that groove, put the biscuit in, we glue it in, and that will make sure that those edges never come apart. And that's another fastener that we have. I'm not going to demonstrate that, but if you pick and choose that style, make sure that you just come up and ask a teacher, because we can do ends or edges in the biscuiting. If you have any further questions on how to select your fastener, there will be a demonstration in class, and you can review the video to select the correct fastener, but talk to your teacher, and the teacher can give you some advice on which fastener that might work best for you.